While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers in America who are approaching or already in retirement, you've tuned into I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, I'm joined by Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. Please check us out online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org, and on Facebook, Retirement Reformation, and we've got an app for that. Go to your local podcast store, whether it's Apple or Google, and download the Retirement Reformation app. And it looks just like the same logo that we've got on our website, retirementreformation.org. The Retirement Reformation is committed to encouraging a movement where every Christ follower, especially the retired kind, is confident of God's plan for a lifetime of faithful service, even in retirement. That your calling doesn't end when you retire, but it goes until the very day you die. That Christ came to reform your life and redeem your life all the way to the very last days of your life, and that you can bear fruit without measure to the very end. We assert the biblical truth that Jesus followers are called to bear fruit all the way through to the end, and affirm that commitment with 10 principles that we lay out in a thing we call the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation, is here today to talk about principle number 9 of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto and its service. Bruce, welcome back to I Retire for Him.
Jim, it's always good to be with you and to our audience. And I'm excited about this particular principle. When we talk about, and as you shared in the introduction, that the Retirement Reformation is a movement. Well, now we're going to talk about service. And now we're going to talk about your movement, the movement of our listeners.
So let's talk about moving them right now, because a lot of them have, they got iPhones like I have. Now, don't laugh at my iPhone's a little older. You got an iPhone. There's an app for that now. The Retirement Reformation has an app. What's the app all about? I'm super excited about this. What's this app all about?
Well, the opportunity, we know that more and more of us are doing more and more on our phones.
We're enslaved to them, right?
Yeah, and so it may be, for example, Judy and I this afternoon are going to go get our COVID vaccination. We're excited about doing that. But I'm sure that when we get to the office, we're going to sit there for a little while. I'll take out my phone and I'll check out the weather or the news or whatever it may be. Now, the ability to be able to do two things that are really exciting about this. Number one is the app. So you have access to all of the support and the information, the products and the support material for the Retirement Reformation right there on the app. Secondly, that when you're a member of the Retirement Reformation, you have access then to the prayer app. And so now you have the opportunity to do that. I find that, when I go to the gym early in the morning and I'm on the treadmill, I'll take that prayer app out and I'll hit that, and that'll give me my prayer list for the next half hour, the next 45 minutes. So the combination of the Retirement Reformation app and the prayer app is a dynamic duo that our listeners shouldn't miss and should put on their phone and access wherever it is that they're resting for a moment.
And it looks just like this, the Retirement Reformation app. If you could see it, I know you could see it on the YouTube video that we're putting together right here. Go to your app store, Retirement Reformation.
And Jim, if you'll notice in that upper left-hand corner as you're facing it,
upper left-hand corner,
what do we see there?
A menu. Oh,
what's the first thing that's showing there? I think it's the manifesto.
Okay,
and so as a matter of fact, if you had that app on your phone, you could click on that, you could dial down, and you could actually read number 9 about service that we're going to talk about here for the next.
That's right there on the manifesto. Yeah, what a fantastic idea. And the manifesto is coming up here. It's a little slow because we're streaming right now for Zoom. But what a great thing. I just love the fact we go down to number 9. Let's go down to, what do we say it was? Let's see, service. Here it is. And it's right here on it. Advocacy, service, right? Service
Yep.
is right there. Love that. I'm so excited. You have everything that's on your website, retirementreformation.org, is now on the app, and we are excited.
We are indeed, and so I think as our audience engages with that, is able to listen to the podcast today, to go back and listen to our podcast that we've done on the prior 8 different elements of the manifesto, and so there's just a way for you to be engaged and open yourself up to what the Holy Spirit is saying to you about your next action step.
Hey, let's get the rest of the commercial stuff out of the way, because the other day we were talking with your whole marketing team, and I realized that there's a difference between getting your weekly devotional or monthly devotional. That you said, what is it? You could get a weekly, you can get a monthly, but you also have a newsletter, and on the newsletter it's got all the links to the podcasts and to the YouTube channel and all. I mean, all of that stuff in one place. How do people get subscribed to that stuff?
Well, they can go to our website and be able to do that. Those who receive the
devotional or the
devotional,
okay,
that comes as part of being a member,
okay,
an initial member, and joining the Retirement Reformation. That membership is free, and one of its benefits is, in fact, that devotional. And so a devotional will come to you once a month for 12 months. So that's all part of that package. It gives you that opportunity to be able to connect in one more way with what God is saying to you. When Jesus said to his disciples, "Follow me," he had a plan.
Right.
And that plan was a plan that evolved with those disciples over that 3-year period. So God's got a plan, and one of our roles at the Retirement Reformation is to help that plan evolve for you and to understand. And that's why these elements of the manifesto are so interesting and so encouraging, particularly the one that we're going to deal with today called service.
Right. That's principle number 9 is service. So what is service, or how does service, we got a minute left in this segment, how does service play into reforming our view of retirement?
Because it answers the question, or is the pathway to what it is that we call living on mission. What does it mean for you to live on God's mission for your life? That's the 30,000-foot view of service.
And we're going to get into that deeper. We've got a great interview coming up with Bruce Gordon, as he just wrote a great book talking about retirement. Love that. And service. So while we're ramping this up for Bruce Gordon, I think we encourage you, go out to the Retirement Reformation website, retirementreformation.org, sign the manifesto, join thousands that are already committed to living out their calling in their retirement. And we're going to talk about calling later today too. But also you could go to the App Store, download the Retirement Reformation app, read the manifesto, and sign it there as well. We'll be right back with more on iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation, with Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation, in just a minute.
There is a move of God in our country called the Retirement Reformation. It's not enough to sit in the grandstands of life, watching the days go by with leisure as a reward. Join us back on the playing field of life, discovering God's plan for you and building purpose and intentionality into every day. Go to retirementreformation.org and click on the Resources tab. Check out our prayer walk and start ministering to your neighbors through prayer today. Connect with your ongoing journey by downloading the prayer app at retirementreformation.org. Click on the Resources tab. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, "I retire for Him." Now, let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. Please check us out online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. Bruce Bruinsma. We always bring on a special guest during our second segment of the podcast, and today I invited somebody onto the podcast. I brought attention to you, a famous guy from Vancouver, British Columbia, who wrote a book, As Long as I Have Breath. Bruce Gordon and you are going to have a conversation. I'll hand it off to the Bruces.
Good. Thank you, Jim. And Bruce, welcome to the podcast. So as long as I have breath, when I first saw that name of the book, I thought, man, that's got to have some value. And it's also probably got a story behind it.
Yeah.
And so, Bruce, maybe you could just quickly just kind of give us an executive summary of how God led you to that title, to the book, its content, and what he's put on your heart.
Well, great to be with the two of you here, coming out of Vancouver. I have a passion to be alongside of, I call it the 55 plus, to really spur them on to be thinking that they are made for more. I wrote a book that I self-published a few years back, and I called it Made for More, though when we put this book together, Focus and Tyndale wanted it as long as I have breath, which I love the title of it, and I wanted it for a couple of reasons. I wanted to be able to give them short, kind of devotional themes where it would grab them, the issues that they're facing, and we're all facing at that age, and then some practical kinds of thoughts of what do I do about it? Some questions to connect with. And so I said, we could do that over 52 weeks and give them a week that they could process it and connect with others. That would be great. One other piece on this is that there's a disconnect between the younger generation, and call them millennials or whatever you want to call them here, and the boomers plus. and I hear it from younger generation saying, Bruce, how do I connect with those who are older? And then I hear from the olders and say, they don't want to talk to me. I'm a has-been. And I'm saying, you've got it wrong. You have it so wrong. And so I have said that maybe perhaps this book, God could use it to really challenge our demographic, but also to be a bit of a bridge between the younger with the older. And so that was part of how this all came together.
And what was it back in your history that gave you that initial passion before you focused, before you thought about all the implications about what is it about the 55 and olders that attracted you to say, why should I spend any time with them?
Yeah. Well, one, because I am one.
That's always a good start.
That's a good place to be. And as I was going into it, it came to, this is really what's behind this, Bruce, is this. I have a consulting practice that I work with leadership, and primarily in transition. And these days we're all in transition. So pretty proud of that. Yeah. And that. In the mid-90s, I was connected with a Dr. Roger Berkman out of Houston. And he actually approached me, who has developed an assessment, a leadership assessment called the Berkman Profile. And Roger and I became very close friends. I spent lots of time on the airplane running back and forth to Houston, and then traveled the world with him as we spoke together. And this is where it came from. Because when he called me on that August afternoon in 1997, the phone rang. I'd never met this man before, but he tracked me down. He was 78 years old. He was in the office every day. And he said, Bruce, will you help me think about the assessment, how we can use it in greater ways? And as I had probably about 15 years with him until he passed away close to 95, he instilled in me that retirement is not the word for us today. And he modeled it for me. And as I spent time in airplanes and talking to he and his wife, Sue, who passed away a few years before he did, I said, Roger, for whatever I have left, I'm going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to ensure that your legacy and people understanding strengths and styles and blind spots carries on. But I'm going to do more than that. I want to help people in our age group here understand that they were really made for more.
Hey, we're talking today with Bruce Gordon on iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. Bruce Gordon wrote this fantastic 52-week devotional, As Long as I Have Breath. And I'm telling you, 1 week, I grabbed one Bruce Gordon that I turned right to it, facing the three giants, the giant of isolation, depression, and loneliness, three giants that every retiree has to face. And I love the fact that, yeah, you have 52-week devotional, but you're going to read this one every day. And really, you could read this one every day for a year to really instill the things that you question. You get people to question things. But I love the fact that you're not dancing around the issues. You're like, hey, these are things that people face. They face loneliness. They face because they hate missing work. People hate, you talked about the story of the guy that after he got retired early, that he went back into his parking lot at his office and he cried because he missed his work so much. I don't know why I didn't go back and be a consultant. Isn't that what everybody else does? But then depression sets in. Well, because work gives us purpose, and then the loneliness and the isolation, because we tend to, we stop hanging out with as many people. But what I love about your book, as long as I have breath, is that it's dealing with real issues that retirees are facing. So Bruce Gordon, thank you. People, listeners, you can get this book on any major retailer. As Long as I Have Breath. It was produced by Tyndale. Bruce Gordon used to be the president of Focus on a Family Canada. So you just type in Bruce Gordon, Focus on a Family, As Long as I Have Breath, or Bruce Gordon, Tyndale, As Long as I Have Breath, and get a copy of this book. Back to you, Bruce Bruinsma.
It's fascinating. For the last 18 years, the financial firm that I founded and led used the Berkman method and has used the Berkman method to help us in all kinds of ways. Matter of fact, I looked at it, one of our staff's Berkmans yesterday. So amazing how God connects us. And I'm also impressed by the fact that the value of one-to-one, and then the expansion that comes from there. That one phone call that you received, and your response to it, and how it changed your life, and how now it is in the process of impacting others. So the story that you tell is one that resonates with the stories of the Retirement Reformation, and we look forward to additional networking and bringing your book to the people that have been attracted to the Retirement Reformation Manifesto, and would hope that you would also. So, is there one particular highlight or thought that God's put on your mind right now that our audience needs to hear?
Well, wow, that's it's a big question. But Bruce, this is how I would answer this. My wife Denise and I, and we've been through lots in our journey as over the years. We're coming up to 50 years.
Congratulations.
We were married young. Coming out of Northern Ontario, that's where my roots are. We choose a word every year and that word guides us. And I chose one, and then I added another one here. And my word for 2021 is multiplication. And then I added overcomer. I've added that one as well, especially coming through the coronavirus and the pandemic and what the new normal, whatever that looks like, coming out of this. But my word, this is what I would say, is multiplication. People are feeling lonely. They are feeling depressed. They are grieving. They're loss of purpose. And my mission and purpose and word to our demographic would be, think through how you can multiply what all the years of experience and all that you have, and how are you going to do that? And there are young people who are they don't know where to go, and they want you more than you fully understand.
Well said. There are so many implications of that. We could have an hour's conversation just off from that word. It's right on. But spreading the word of the kingdom and how God would have us interact and learn from each other, and then be in community with each other to bring strength and guidance to each other. Just wonderful. Bruce Gordon, we're so glad that we've met. Look forward to the next level of conversation. And thank you for listening to what God was saying to you and bringing out the book, As Long as I Have Breath. And the way we say it is that we are called to be faithful for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Bruce Gordon, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back with more on I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Make sure you get a copy of this book, As Long as I Have Breath, on all of your local retailers.
You've spent decades making financial plans for your retirement years. But have you done any life planning? God has a plan for your life, and it includes living out your faith in your retirement years with meaning, purpose, and intentionality. Go out to retirementreformation.org and click on our Resources tab. Download a copy of the book, Charting Your Course, and get started with life planning today. Simply download a copy of Charting Your Course at retirementreformation.org. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. What a fantastic conversation with Bruce Gordon. We're going to have to bring him back and talk more about what he wrote about in his book. Just a great conversation, Bruce. I love it. But we got to get back to service. We didn't dig into it. So the service principle says this in the Retirement Manifesto. It says service. We live on mission for Jesus, representing Him to others. God calls each of us to be on mission during every stage of life. An important role for those in retirement is to pass on wisdom learned and encourage the next generation. Through coaching, mentoring, volunteering, and grandparenting, these are valuable opportunities available to us to pass this wisdom on. Bruce, I love this service thing. So talk to me about this. What does service look like for someone reforming their retirement through one of those things you just mentioned, through this coaching, mentoring, volunteering, and grandparenting? How does service play out?
Yeah, these are the action steps that evolve from the natural evolution of, first of all, having that aha moment and saying, yes, there's more to retirement. Number two, understanding that it's a length of time. Third, understanding that there are at least 3 different stages in retirement. And in each one of those, then the question is, and so when Jesus said, follow me, what does that mean for me? How do I follow Him? We know that one of the ways to follow Him is to represent Him to those who either don't know Him or need to have an expanded vision. Who are those people and how do we do that? One of the ways we do that is to appreciate the DNA and the experience and the gifts and the talents that we've each been given individually, and then to be able to represent and pass that on to others. So who are these others that we can be in service to?
Yeah, who are they and how do we get access to them? I think that's the question that everybody's asking. So, okay, fine. First identify them, Bruce. Who are they?
Well, first of all, let's take our grandkids. We can just simply start right there. You know where they are and you know how to be with them. And so to be able to take that step of service to them, to be able to share with them not only the experiences of your family and your story and who are you and all of those kinds of things, but then the lessons that you've learned. And so be able to pass them on with that context. Secondly, let's expand out. There are people that are in your life group or in your Sunday school class or in your church that are your age that need to be encouraged. Then there are those who are younger than you are, young marrieds, let's say, or a single mom with 2 kids. Those are places where not only sharing your experience, but your hands, heart, and maybe even some of your finances to be able to be in service to them. Expands then out to your neighborhood. Expands then out to your opportunities to volunteer. The opportunities. I did a podcast yesterday with a woman from Mission Next, where you can go and they will help you to connect with ministries that need the skill sets that you have of all different kinds. And so as we expand out to the different opportunities, then and know that when we provide service that God has uniquely created us to be able to do, and we're connected with that gives us meaning and purpose, what happens is that our heart explodes and we find freedom and joy in that process. So
what does that look like for you and Judy? When you walk outside of Envoy Financial and you walk outside of I Retire for Him and the Retirement Reformation, and you're just Bruce Bruinsma walking the streets of Colorado Springs, What does service look like for the two of you guys?
Well, service looks to the two of us. Sometimes it is a physical service. There is someone who has a need, and we do our best to either fulfill the need, could be to bring them dinner, just to be as practical as you can, to provide some funding, perhaps, to be able to connect them with someone else who can help them. So that connector role is a big thing for Judy and I to be able to do. We also have friends throughout the country and who have issues. So kind of a coaching, mentoring, information sharing capacity is one of the things that for both Judy and myself makes it brings us joy and is part of what it is that we do. And I think for us, the single biggest thing, Jim, is just simply being available to the service opportunities that God puts in front of us.
You guys are busy people. And there's a lot of people listening to this that are busy people. I've never met a retired person that was not busy. They're like, I don't know how I ever fit work into my schedule. I mean, how many times have you ever heard that? Every time I hear that, I'm like, I don't like you anymore. So, but I think what's really important as when we look at this, putting service into action, it's to not miss the people that God puts in front of us. Because every day, whether it's maybe even a cashier at the local grocery store or the person in the convenience store after you get a tank full of gas, you want to go in and get a donut or whatever, or somebody, maybe McDonald's, that's my favorite. I love to get a mocha frappe from McDonald's, greeting the person in the drive-thru nicely, especially if you go there often enough, like I do. So, but knowing to meet everybody that God puts in your path, to know that you can serve them too. A lot of times you can tell by their tone of voice that maybe they're not having a good day. You say, hey, is there something I can pray about for you? It's just a quick little thing like that. And the next time you buy, you can ask them about that same thing. And in case you might forget, write it down, their first name, what you're praying about.
Those are wonderful. I think when we're at a dine-in restaurant, to be able to ask the waiter or the waitress, how can I pray for you? I had some amazing conversations as a result of that very simple, very, very simple, right. Very, very simple question.
Well, and Bruce,
also,
go ahead.
Just add one more. Is I think it's a service when you can impact someone else's life. It may be momentarily, or it may be extended over a period of time. It may be physical, it may be emotional, it may be spiritual, but you can be of service. One of the things that I've had some fun with recently is to thinking about, everybody asks you, so how are you? And the typical answer is fine, and you move on, and it's just perfunctory. So I was just thinking about what kind of an answer could I come up with that, in fact, might prompt a little different response. And the one I'm using currently, pass it on for what it's worth, say, well, Bruce, how are you doing? Well, actually, just short of fantastic. It's amazing what happens to people's faces when you say that. They light up, they smile, they laugh a little, they say, oh, that's good. And it was an encouragement for them.
Sure.
That very simple exchange.
When I ask somebody, how you doing? Or if I'm up north, I say, how you doing? Because you got to pull out the New York thing. And they say, fine. I say, really? Fine? Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional? No, really. How are you doing? And it overcomes, I got that from The Italian Job, by the way, that great movie. But that's how I overcome fine. Because I don't want to have that kind of conversation with people from church or people in my neighborhood or people. If somebody's hurting, I want to know. So there's a lot of people, though, that are going, you mentioned that service could look like coaching or mentoring. And a lot of people get freaked out, like, I can't be a coach, I can't be a mentor. But that's the kind of thing that just naturally can happen, especially in a neighborhood or a church environment where you just start hanging out with people and you start investing your life in people, and it ends up being coaching or mentoring, but you never have the title, right?
Also to note that as part of the Retirement Reformation, we have a whole coaching curriculum that, in fact, you can go through a coaching experience.
Where you'll coach them or teach them how to be a coach?
Well, it starts with, you're not going to teach what you don't know and you haven't experienced. So the first thing is to experience. And so we have a professional coaching team. As a matter of fact, there's a little questionnaire when you become a member that you have access to. I can't remember, 7 or 8 questions. One of the results of that is that you have an opportunity to experience a coaching session. And that's really a good experience, because a good coach doesn't tell you what to do. What a good coach does is ask you the questions that'll help you clarify who you are, and where you're going. And so I would just urge our listeners to take advantage of that. It is just so helpful. I find that helpful in my life. Maybe every 3 or 4 months to sit down with someone who is a good coach and say, "Can I just have a conversation with you for a little bit? And will you ask me some of the questions that you're asking the people that you're coaching, and let's see how that can help me." And it always brings clarity, brings energy, brings understanding.
And that all drives back to calling. Because as you said so many times on this show, is that we all have a calling. And the calling on our life doesn't end when we retire. It ends when we die. So, and actually, technically, if you're a believer, it doesn't end when you die either. That calling carries forward into your work within heaven and in the New Jerusalem that we'll get to all serve in one day. Talk to me about calling as our final minute of this show today. How do I know what my calling is?
Understanding your calling can either be something that you innately know what it is, but for most of us, it takes a little bit of work. It takes some work because we're going to learn about the calling and how the Holy Spirit works in our lives through the Bible, through prayer, through some meditation, and learning how to listen to God and then be willing to take steps. For me, I found it to be a sequential process, not just one big aha, but a sequential process of my understanding what God has uniquely prepared me to be and the passion that he put in me to bring to it.
Yeah, we got to talk more about calling on our next podcast coming up, because a lot of people are going, but this calling thing. But here's a key, I think, for our listeners and for each of us, Bruce, is that if we don't really know what our calling is, ask some of our best friends, say, what do you think the calling is on my life? And if they know you well enough, they'll be able to point it out for you, and you'll go like, well, that was simple enough. Bruce, great conversation today about service. We encourage you all to go out there and find us on retirementreformation.org. Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Jim. God bless.
Check us out online, retirementreformation.org, or download the app. But whichever way you connect with us, make sure you sign the manifesto. This is going to transform the way you look at retirement. You've been listening to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation, with your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We're Christ followers, and we're trying to figure out how to move from retirement to reformation. We're making a journey from retirement to reformation so we can ultimately say, I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts Jim and Martha Brangenberg and Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Bruinsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.